My 26-year-old unemployed sister was getting a $3,000 Florida vacation funded by my paychecks while I was expected to stay home and babysit her kids for free. I found out by accident standing in the hallway outside the kitchen while my mom talked on the phone. "The resort's all booked," she said, sounding almost giddy. 2 weeks, ocean view, kids club for Sarah's little ones. She really needs this break. I stayed frozen, pretending to scroll my phone as every word sank in. Florida, 2 weeks, ocean view, kids club. All paid for. I looked down at my work badge, still hanging from my neck, the one I'd forgotten to take off after another 60-hour week. The same job that covered the electric bill, the groceries, and half the rent in this house. Then Mom said the part that made my stomach drop. "Well, someone has to stay here with the kids," she added casually. "We can't leave them alone." That was it. That was the whole plan. They weren't just going on vacation without me. They were going because I wasn't going. Because I would be here, because I was the one who always was. I stood there in that narrow hallway, listening to my mother budget my time, my paycheck, and my life for everyone else's happiness. And suddenly the whole picture snapped into focus. They weren't packing a trip. They were assigning me a job. They were planning to leave me with my sister's kids. Let me explain how I became the family ATM. It started small, like it always does. When Sarah lost her job 2 years ago, Mom asked if I could help with utilities just until she got back on her feet. When Sarah's kids needed school supplies, could I pick some up? When the grocery bill got too high, could I chip in? I said yes because that's what you do for family. But Sarah never got back on her feet. Instead, she got comfortable. Comfortable with me covering the electric bill every month. Comfortable with me buying groceries for 6 people when I lived alone. Comfortable with me babysitting her kids every weekend so she could have a life. The math was brutal when I finally added it up. I still had the utility app open on my phone when I did it. $412.67 for electricity. $186.40 for water. All pulled from my account. My name was the only one on the payment history. On top of that, I was paying $300 a month for groceries that fed everyone but me. $200 in gas, money driving kids to soccer practice and birthday parties. Plus my own rent, my own food, my own life, when I had time for one. Meanwhile, Sarah got unemployment checks, child support, and whatever cash gifts Mom and Dad scraped together for their struggling daughter. She'd show me her unemployment deposits like it was proof she was trying. I'd show Mom my bank app and she'd just say, "Well, you're the one who can handle it." She got sympathy, she got help, she got excuses. I got expectations. When Sarah's car broke down, I drove her everywhere. When her kids were sick, I took time off work to stay with them. When she needed a night out, I canceled my plans to babysit. I was the glue holding everything together. But here's the thing about being the family glue: nobody notices you're there until you're gone. You become invisible, essential but invisible. The person everyone counts on but no one considers. Sarah was the victim who needed saving. I was the workhorse who needed managing. She got praise for doing her best as a single mom. I got lectures about being more understanding when I complained about missing my own life to manage hers. She got defended when she made mistakes. I got blamed when I didn't fix them. One night I heard Mom whisper it in the kitchen, not even trying to hide it. "Riley will cover it. She always does." The vacation was just the latest example. Sarah deserved a break from the stress of unemployment and single motherhood. I deserved to stay home and provide free childcare so she could take it. Mom called it looking out for each other. Dad called it being responsible. Sarah called it Tuesday. But what they all called it when they thought I couldn't hear was what Riley was supposed to do. Because I was the one with the steady job and no kids. The one who could handle anything. The one who never said no. Family helps family, but only when it helped them. I went to my room and sat on my bed, staring at that work badge still hanging around my neck. $3,000, 2 weeks in Florida, ocean view rooms and kids clubs, and probably room service they'd charged to the family credit card, the one I'd been making minimum payments on for 6 months. The dates they'd picked were the same 2 weeks Sarah had been asking me to take her kids overnight because they're driving me crazy. The same 2 weeks I'd already promised to help with summer babysitting. The same 2 weeks I'd blocked off my social calendar because family comes first. They hadn't just planned a vacation without me, they'd planned it around me, around my availability, around the assumption that I would be here, reliable as always, ready to drop my life for theirs. I pictured Sarah posting beach photos on Instagram while I was changing diapers and making mac and cheese for the third night in a row. Mom calling from a poolside bar to ask if the kids were in bed. Me coming home from another 60-hour week to a house full of toys and messes that weren't mine. And then it hit me. This wasn't a spontaneous trip. This was a budgeted, coordinated family plan, which meant they'd been talking about it for weeks, maybe months. The next morning, I found Mom in the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling between us. "So," I said, keeping my voice flat, "Sarah mentioned something about Florida." Mom's hand froze on the mug, just for a second. "Oh, it's just a little getaway. You know how stressed she's been." "Stressed about what? She doesn't work." "Riley," she sighed, already slipping into that tired parent tone. "Single motherhood is hard. She needs a break." "What about me?" "From what? You love your job, you don't have kids, you've got your freedom." "Freedom while paying their bills and raising their children. Who's watching the kids while you're all in Florida?" "Well," she started wiping a counter that was already clean. "We were hoping maybe you could help out. You're so good with them, it's only 2 weeks." There it was, the assumption. "I work, Mom." "You could work something out. Maybe use some vacation days or work from home." "Work from home while watching 3 kids under 10. She said someone needed to watch the kids. "Someone needs to watch the kids," Mom repeated, like it was a law of nature instead of a choice they'd made for me. Why me? Why not ask Aunt Linda or hire a babysitter? Linda's got her own life, and babysitters are expensive. She looked at me like I'd suggested setting money on fire. "Besides, the kids are comfortable with you. They love their Aunt Riley." Aunt Riley. Not their cousin, not their friend, their caretaker. What if I said no? Mom's face shifted into that wounded expression she'd perfected over the years. "I would never force you to do anything, but I thought you cared about this family." There it was, guilt dressed up as disappointment. Dad wandered in then, drawn by the tension. "What's going on?" "Riley doesn't want to help with the kids while we're in Florida," Mom said, like I just announced I was selling the house. "Now, Riley," Dad said, lowering his voice into that calm, reasonable tone. "Your sister's been through a lot. She needs this break. And you know what they say? Family helps family. Family helps family." The phrase that had justified every bill they'd ever handed me. "She's been through a lot," I said. "I paid $400 of the electric bill last month. $300 for groceries, $200 in gas for her kids. What about me?" "That's not fair," Mom snapped. "Sarah's dealing with depression. Single motherhood is incredibly hard. And working 60 hours a week to pay everyone else's bills isn't?" "That's different," Dad said quickly. "You chose your career. Sarah didn't choose to be abandoned." Abandoned, like she was some helpless victim, not a grown woman being supported by everyone around her, mostly me. The conversation spiraled. Every point I made became selfishness. Every boundary became betrayal. They kept saying I was being selfish. At one point, Mom actually said, "You make everything about money," even though the electric bill was still sitting on the counter with my name on it. Dad nodded along, like the numbers in black ink somehow didn't count. They didn't argue that I was paying. They argued that it wasn't supposed to matter. That being the one who could cover things meant I was obligated to. That needing less meant giving more. The next day, I went to Sarah. She was in the living room, kids scattered around her while she scrolled through Pinterest, saving beach resorts and spa packages to her vision board. "I can't watch the kids for 2 weeks, I told her. "I have a job." She barely looked up. "It's 2 weeks, Riley. They're my kids, not wild animals. Just make sure they don't die." "I work full time." "So? You never go anywhere. It's not like you had plans." "Shaway, why do you get a vacation and I get your responsibilities?" "It's called being a family," she said. "Sometimes you sacrifice for the people you love." "When do you sacrifice for me?" She blinked. "You don't need help. You're stable." "Because I work for it. Because I pay for it." She sighed. "God, you make everything so transactional. Watching my kids for 2 weeks is the least you could do." She said watching her kids was the least I could do. That night I sat alone at my kitchen table in my own apartment, my laptop open, my bank statement spread out, and a calculator beside my coffee mug. If they wanted to treat this like it was all about money, fine. Let's talk about money. I started with the easy stuff. Utilities for Mom and Dad's house. I pulled up my banking app and scrolled back through 6 months of automatic payments. Electric, $186, $203, $167, $241, $198, $184, all from my account. Water, $89, $94, $87, $102, $91, $88, also mine. Then groceries, every Walmart receipt, every Target run, $300 a month minimum. Sometimes closer to $400 when Sarah decided the kids needed organic snacks or special cereal. Gas money was harder to track, but Venmo made it easy. 20 here, 40 there, 60 for that birthday party 3 hours away. $200 a month at least. Then the one-time expenses, Sarah's car registration, school supplies, Halloween costumes, Christmas gifts, Easter clothes. I didn't just guess, I checked. I opened my email and searched receipt, order confirmed, payment successful. My inbox filled with proof, school backpacks, soccer cleats, birthday cakes, pharmacy runs for kids that weren't mine. Even notes on Venmo, thanks for covering this, I'll get you back, promises that never happened. One transaction had a little heart emoji next to it, like my money was some kind of gift instead of survival. I built a spreadsheet, month by month, category by category, dollar by dollar. Rent? I paid my own, plus half of mom and dad's when child support ran short. Insurance. I'd added Sarah and the kids to my health plan because it was temporary. Phone bill, family plan under my name because my credit was better. Internet, the house where they lived because I was the one who worked from home sometimes. The numbers kept climbing. 70%. I was covering nearly 70% of the household expenses for a home I didn't even live in. The numbers were worse than I thought. The next morning, I called Aunt Celeste. I told her everything. The Florida trip, the bills, the babysitting, the expectation that I'd keep everything running while they went to the beach. So, how long has this been going on? She asked. 2 years, maybe more. And you've been paying most of it? I hesitated. Yeah. Riley, she said quietly, that's financial abuse. It's family. Family doesn't drain one person dry while everyone else relaxes. But Sarah's struggling. Sarah has 3 kids and no job by choice. You have 3 jobs keeping them all afloat. Who's really struggling? I didn't answer. I've watched this happen for 2 years, Celeste said. You always look exhausted. You're always working. You're always taking care of everyone else. Then she said the thing that finally cracked something open in me. So, honey, you've been invisible for too long. She said I'd been invisible for too long. After I hung up with Celeste, I went back to my spreadsheet. But this time, I wasn't just documenting what I'd spent. I was building evidence. I created tabs, monthly utilities, groceries, gas money, emergency expenses, kids stuff. Each one filled with dates, amounts, and screenshots from my banking app. The utility tab was devastating. Not just because of the amounts, but because of the pattern. Every single month for 2 years, my name on every payment. Not Riley and Sarah split the electric. Not family shared expense. Just me. Over and over. I added up the grocery receipts next. Not just the big trips, but every, can you grab milk on your way over? And, the kids need lunch money. And, we're out of bread. $347 average per month. For a family I didn't live with. The emergency expenses were their own special kind of painful. Sarah's car insurance when she couldn't make the payment. Birthday gifts for kids' parties because we can't show up empty-handed. School fundraisers, field trip fees, sports equipment, even Christmas. I had receipts from last Christmas where I'd bought presents for Sarah's kids, wrapped them, and watched her put her name on the tags. I wasn't just supporting them financially, I was funding the illusion that they were supporting themselves. When I added it all up, utilities, groceries, gas, insurance, phone bills, emergency expenses, kids' activities, the number made me nauseous. I'd been paying 70% of their expenses, but money was just part of it. The other part was harder to quantify, but I tried anyway. I made a new tab, unpaid labor, babysitting. Every weekend for 2 years, conservative estimate 8 hours per weekend. That's 832 hours of childcare at what, $15 an hour minimum? Over $12,000. But it wasn't just weekends. There were sick days when I took time off work to stay with the kids. School pickups when Sarah couldn't make it. Evening babysitting so she could have a social life, holiday help, summer vacation coverage. I started tracking everything I could remember, the time I spent grocery shopping for them, driving kids to soccer practice, helping with homework, cleaning up after family dinners I'd brought the food for, the house maintenance I'd paid for and supervised, The paperwork I'd helped Sarah fill out, the phone calls I'd made on her behalf when she was too overwhelmed to handle her own bills. I wasn't just their ATM, I was their personal assistant, their nanny, their safety net, and their unpaid employee all rolled into one. When I calculated it conservatively, and I was being conservative, they owed me 3 years of back pay. But the final piece, the one that made everything click into place, was when I looked at their vacation budget against what I'd been providing. $3,000 for Florida. Hotel, flights, food, activities, the works. I opened my spreadsheet again and ran the numbers. In the 3 months leading up to their vacation, I'd covered $1,847 in household expenses they couldn't afford. Utilities, groceries, emergency car repairs, kids' summer activities. Without my contributions, they wouldn't have had $3,000 for anything, let alone a family vacation. I was literally subsidizing their ability to afford a trip they weren't inviting me on. The vacation wasn't separate from my financial support. It was made possible by it. Every electric bill I'd paid was money they could save for beaches. Every grocery run I'd covered was money they could spend on room service. Every tank of gas I'd bought for Sarah's car was money they could put toward plane tickets. They weren't just going on vacation without me, they were going on vacation because of me. Because I'd been quietly covering the basic expenses that would have made a vacation impossible. I'd been working overtime to pay for their leisure time. I'd been funding my own exclusion. I stared at that spreadsheet for a long time, then I closed my laptop and made a decision. I was done. Done paying for a family that treated me like an employee. Done funding vacations I wasn't invited to. Done being the invisible foundation everyone else built their lives on. The next morning, I started apartment hunting. Not for a bigger place to fit more family obligations, for something smaller, just mine. Somewhere they couldn't find me when the electric bill came due. I ran the numbers for my own life. My rent, my groceries, my utilities, my gas. Without their expenses, I could actually save money. I could breathe. I found a one-bedroom across town. Nice neighborhood, secure building, too far away for surprise babysitting drop-offs. The rent was affordable, especially if I wasn't paying their power bill this month. The landlord said I could move in next week. I signed the lease without telling anyone. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But signing the lease was the easy part. Telling them was the risk. If I just disappeared, they'd control the story. They'd tell the family I abandoned them, that I left Sarah stranded, that I was selfish. They might even use the kids to pull me back in. Telling them I didn't love them anymore, that I'd chosen money over them. I pictured Mom calling relatives before I could explain. Dad shaking his head like I'd betrayed them. Sarah crying to anyone who would listen about how I'd ruined everything. I could lose holidays. I could lose the kids I'd helped raise. They could show up at my new apartment demanding answers, demanding help, demanding I fix what they refused to face. What scared me most wasn't the yelling, it was the silence. The way they could all decide together that I was the problem, that I was the one who broke the family. I'd seen them do it before, just never to me. They were good at rewriting stories, at making the person who finally said no look like the villain. So I chose to do it in the open. I would tell them at Sunday dinner. The same dinner where they'd probably be talking about Florida, asking me to grab groceries, reminding me how much they needed me. I spent the week preparing. I printed the spreadsheet, the Venmo requests, the emergency texts, every receipt that showed how deeply they depended on my money. I stacked it all in a folder like a resignation packet. Because that's what it was. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't a tantrum. This was me quitting a job I never applied for. They could yell, they could cry, they could guilt trip me. But I'd already signed the lease. I already knew what my life looked like without them. It was time to stop being invisible. Sunday dinner looked exactly like it always did. Mom's famous lasagna steamed on the table, the one she only made when I bought the ingredients. The kids were chasing each other through the living room. Sarah sat on her phone, scrolling through Florida resort reviews like it was already a done deal. Dad watched football, the unpaid cable bill still sitting on the counter with my name on it. They were relaxed, comfortable, secure in the routine where I paid and they lived. I waited until everyone was seated, plates full of food I'd covered. "I have something to tell you," I said. "Oh, good," Mom said, not even looking up. "We wanted to talk to you two about Florida. We were thinking maybe you could take half days instead of using all your vacation time." "I'm moving out." Forks froze in midair. "What?" Dad said. "I signed a lease. I'm done paying your bills." Sarah's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto her plate. You can't be serious. As of next week, I said, you'll be paying your own utilities, your own groceries, everything. Mom laughed nervously. Riley, stop joking. Nah, I'm not joking. Her smile collapsed. We can't afford. I know, I said. That's been the problem. The room erupted. You're abandoning us. You're destroying this family. You're being selfish. Sure. How am I selfish? I asked. By not wanting to keep paying for all of you? Sarah has kids, Mom snapped. We're on a fixed income. And I work 60 hours a week to subsidize everyone in this room. Silence. I've been paying 70% of this household's expenses for 2 years. Dad stared at me. That's not possible. I reached for the folder. Receipts slid across the table, pushing plates aside. Electric bills, grocery statements, Venmo screenshots, school fees, gas payments. Every month, I said. Every year, my name on every payment. Sarah flipped through the pages, her face draining of color. This is your car registration, I said, tapping one page. Your kids' school supplies, your grocery budget. I've been paying for your life while you were planning a vacation without me. Family helps family, Sarah whispered. When was the last time you helped me? She didn't answer. Dad picked up a bill and stared at it. The electric, this is due Tuesday. Yes. We don't have that. I know. Mom started crying. You can't just leave us like this. You left me like this for 2 years. A knock sounded at the door. Aunt Celeste stepped in holding a pie. Am I late? She stopped when she saw the papers spread across the table. What's going on? No one answered. She picked up one sheet, then another. Her eyes moved fast. Oh my God, she said quietly. Mom tried to speak, but no words came out. These are Riley's payments, Celeste said. Every single one. Dad looked sick. The Florida trip? I said. $3,000. That's exactly how much I've covered for you in the last 3 months alone. So we can't go? Sarah asked. You can go if you pay for it yourselves. Mom reached for my hand. Please, we can work something out. No. Dad tried again. Maybe we can split things. No. This isn't a negotiation, I said. This is me quitting. Quitting what? Sarah snapped. Being your ATM, your nanny, your backup plan. What about the kids? Mom cried. What about when Sarah needs help? What about Sarah getting a job? Sarah broke down. I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose to be a single mom. And I didn't choose to fund your life. She sobbed. You're ruining everything. No, I said. I'm ending it. The room was silent except for her crying. Dad looked at the stack of bills again. So that's it? That's it. I picked up my folder and my keys. The Florida vacation? I said. The one you're planning? You can afford it because I've been paying your basic expenses. Not anymore. Sarah looked up, terrified. What are we supposed to do? I turned back one last time. That's not my responsibility anymore. I moved out 3 days later. The apartment was everything I'd imagined. Quiet, clean, mine. No toys on the floor, no unpaid bills with someone else's name on them. No guilt waiting for me when I came home from work. The first month was the hardest, not because I missed them, but because I kept waiting for them to show up, to demand I fix what I'd broken. They did call. Mom crying about groceries, Dad asking if we could work something out, Sarah leaving voicemails about how the kids missed me. After the first week, I changed my number. They still tried. One night, Sarah even went to my old place, only to find it empty. Aunt Celeste told me later she stood in the parking lot, phone in her hand, realizing she couldn't reach me anymore. 6 months later, Celeste said Sarah finally got a job, part-time at first, then full-time. Mom and Dad downsized to a place they could actually afford. The Florida vacation was canceled. Added. They struggled for a while, not the kind of struggle that made the news, just the kind that comes from finally having to live inside the reality they'd been avoiding. Sarah complained about early mornings. Mom worried about money. Dad stopped watching football every night. For the first time, their lives matched their income. The kids were okay. Kids always are. As for me, I took my first real vacation in 3 years. Not Florida, somewhere better. Somewhere I chose, paid for entirely with money I earned and kept. I sent one postcard to Celeste. It said, finally visible. For 26 years, I'd been the glue holding everyone else together. Turns out I didn't need them to be whole. I just needed to stop being invisible.